right, our meeting is back in session. The next item on our agenda is the administrative, is the academic
Research.
whatever we've renamed it. Academic Research Student Affairs Committee. Regent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on our agenda, first and only action item, is the proffer of an Associate of Science in Nursing at MSU Great Falls. I'm not sure who's going to make the initial presentation on that, but I guess who it is now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Our Chief Academic Officer, Heidi Pasek, is in Seattle for Northwest's annual meeting and training, so she has asked me to step in, and I will do my best not to make her or the institution look bad. I'll keep my comments real brief. I know there are other individuals in the audience who want to provide some comment on this item specifically. But in short, our proposal before you today is to add the third year of the state standard nursing curriculum to the offerings at MSU Great Falls. Perhaps I could give you just a little bit of background for context. As most of you are aware, in 2005, I believe, you as a board adopted a state standard curriculum in conjunction with the adoption of that curriculum by the State Board of Nursing. MSU Great Falls in 2006 then adopted the first 2 years of that state curriculum that led to a credential in the practical nursing, a license, an LPN credential with that. I can tell you since that time of us moving to the state curriculum, we have had continual requests from our community and from our students asking us to add that third year. And here's why we heard it, and here's what we heard. First was the cost. They wanted to see the continuity of the cost, both in tuition and fees, and the related costs for participation to get to the RN level. And that was very important to them. The second was the continuity of the programming, specifically in the location and the seamlessness of the 3 years. There are other options. We'll probably hear about MSU Northern's program that has a long history and a successful history in Great Falls, but there are continuity issues for our students, and they were concerned about the need to administratively transfer institutions, have to leave the community to complete their clinical rotations, especially when they believe, and I would agree, that there is an opportunity for them to actually do that all within Great Falls. Those were the primary concerns that led us to our conversations that have really been happening for the past couple of years, both in the exploration of this program through the conduction of the feasibility study for the Montana State Board of Nursing. I do want to point out, and I know there will be some questions, and it seems that the major concerns, especially in Great Falls, is how would this program, the addition of these 20 students at the RN level, impact the other nursing programs that exist in Great Falls, predominantly MSU Bozeman's College of Nursing in Great Falls, and then MSU Northern's nursing programming in Great Falls. Our approach and our communication from the start is that there is adequate need, there is adequate demand, and there's adequate opportunity to absorb all of these programs and probably then some. And I think you'll hear some comments from individuals from Benefits Healthcare that will support that statement. We have never been focusing on displacing anyone from nursing education in Great Falls. And in fact, we probably still need to do more past this in Great Falls. And so I want to be clear that we believe and support all of the programs that currently exist in Great Falls. We don't want to see anyone displaced. We truly believe that there is that adequate opportunity. So I will stop there, be happy to stand for any questions, and I do know that there will be other individuals who'd like to make public comment.
Are there any questions to the speaker at this time? Would you want to hear from the other proponents, and then we'll have, why don't we have the presentation, then we'll deal with any questions after that, so we can get them sort of uninterrupted here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, at that time, then maybe I'll look for my colleagues from Benefits Health System to make their comments, and then I know we do have a few students who would also like to do that.
Mr. Chairman, other members of the committee, my name is Terry Olinger. I am the Chief Human Resource and System Services Officer for Benefits Health System. Benefits Health System employs over 2,600 workers, healthcare workers in our community and region. We employ over 800 nurses. The college is bringing this proposed RN program forward because Benefits has asked it to. We feel it is really important for us because it is an unmet community need, and the community is asking for us to do it, as well as our employees is asking for us to do it. We have a number of folks who need to get this education or would like to have this education who cannot afford to travel back and forth, cannot afford the extra tuition involved. We'd like to work with our local community college, as we have in the past for several other programs, to provide the full spectrum of nursing as designated in the state standard 3-year curriculum. It makes sense that students in Great Falls can enroll in their local institution and complete their program in their own community. It's unreasonable to ask employees or our Great Falls residents to enroll in a program that required them to leave the community to complete in other parts of the state. In addition, the current options are not very conducive to working LPNs who want to go and get their RN degree because it requires travel to Lewistown and Havre. And I would say that we would echo that for certified nursing assistants as well. It doesn't make sense that a Great Falls resident would pay higher tuition and distance learning fees to enroll in a program in their community. And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit, or have Julie Hicswa, our Chief Nursing Officer, talk a little bit about the needs to develop more nurses. As I mentioned before, we have over 800 nurses employed at Benefits, and that demand to replace nursing because of their aging workforce, et cetera, and just our demands in terms of growth is just going to be out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie Hicswa.
You know, I noticed no, please go ahead. I was going to comment. I noticed a sort of a large crowd in the back of the room, and so I certainly want to encourage everyone that has something to say it. At the same time, if someone it'll be simple enough to say that you are in support, and if someone has already voiced the particular things you have, you can just say, tell us that you agree, rather than repeat them, so everyone will have a chance to make it. Keep in mind, the proposal as it comes to us is full-fledged with the feasibility study. All the data's been attached, and we've all received and read that before we came here. So we are cognizant of the underlying facts. So we do want to hear your voice, but just keep that in mind. So thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Julie Hicswa, and as Terry said, I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at Benefits, and I'm also a nurse. Terry talked to you a little bit about the community need for nurses and why it's important to have students be able to go from a 2 to a 3-year program and then get actively and quickly into the workforce. I want to talk to you a little bit, like for 2 minutes, about why it's important nationally. There is a projected nursing shortage going on nationally that's looming in front of us in the next about 5 years. And depending on the source, it looks like we will have a shortage of anywhere from 600,000 to 1.2 million nurses in this country. Those are the people who will be taking care of us as we enter retirement. The bottleneck is that there's a lot of people that want to be nurses because it's a solid career, especially in difficult economic times, but there isn't access to nursing programs. And so I think if we think futuristically about it, there is an opportunity to let people become nurses and not only fulfill their career need, but meet the healthcare needs of our region. The other thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is the concern about clinical access. We've worked very collaboratively with all of the programs in Great Falls, which includes MSU Bozeman, all of the programs at COT, including respiratory therapy, EMTs, all of the healthcare professions. And as Terry said, we have over 800 nurses. We have multiple campuses, and I can assure you we have the capability and the capacity to take on 20 extra students. That will be absolutely not an issue. So I'm here just to support and say that we absolutely support a 3-year program and hope that you would give it full consideration. Are there any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name's Pam Windmiller, and I'm Manager of Education Services at Benefits Health System. I'm just here in support of the program. And to reiterate what Julie just said, I do work directly with the instructors and those who make the plan the clinical rotations through both MSU Bozeman, MSU Northern, and MSU COT. We do a collaborative scheduling, and we've never had a problem. We work very well together. We have a long-standing history of that, and I don't foresee any problems either.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate your effort on that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. We would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Philip Riegelmeyer, and I am a current student at the MSU COT with aspirations to enter the nursing program with a goal of acquiring my registered nursing degree.
Hi, I'm Casey Lambert. I am also a pre-nursing student at MSU. I've also been an employee at Benefits for 9 years, so I'm very familiar with this setting. I am also in support of keeping us local, the program local. We're very familiar with this community, and just leaving for an extended period of time is not beneficial to those of us who have spouses in the military, such as myself and several others with children as well. So would be beneficial for us to stay here.
Just to elaborate on what the other speakers had just said, I would have to agree 100% on everything that they would have to say. Just to elaborate on the addition of the ADN program, just as Julie had said, there are many shortages not only locally but around the nation of nurses, and by adding an ADN program locally, that will just add another program to implement 20 more future nurses to our nation and to increase what's the word I'm looking for? Patient care throughout our nation. And so just to help with that, adding the ADN program would be completely beneficial, and staying localized to elaborate with what Casey had said. Thank you very much for your time.
Good, thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Carrie Keebler. I graduated from Northern's program in December, and then a year before that, the LPN program. I'm here also in support of the ADN through the RN program at the college, because I was one that paid the traveling costs, and it's kind of good maybe to put a face to the traveling cost. Between Liz and I, we paid probably $600 just to travel and eat for the 5 weeks to go to Lewistown on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I'm also a mother of 5, so to ask me to leave my 5 children for 3 days, for 5 weeks kind of seems unrealistic when there's a campus there that could, accommodate the needs of people like me who do have children, and I could stay. And it wouldn't be such a hit to the pocketbook, because if you've been in school, most of the time you work part-time or you don't work, so you're broke. So to come up with an additional $600, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're pinching pennies already, and that's a lot. That was just hotel and food. That didn't include gas or people to watch my children because I wasn't there. That gets pretty expensive. So to bring it to Great Falls, I think it would be an asset to the community. And I do, like I said, what's 20 more nurses to the community? It's not going to hurt anything. You're not taking anything away, you're just adding.
I'm Liz Andrews, and I graduated in December from Northern. It also was kind of challenging to transfer credits from, I was also in the LPN program, and it was hard to transfer credits to Northern, so it would be better if there was, another option. And like Carrie said, it was very difficult to transfer, so if everything could just be located in Great Falls, that would be a lot easier for students.
Yeah, and the one thing I guess we forgot to add was, because Northern doesn't have administrative offices on campus anymore at Great Falls, a lot of times you played phone tag for weeks trying to figure out either what was going on with your financial aid or to get a hold of, the program directors there. It just, you couldn't do it because you couldn't go knock on the door or leave a note or anything because nobody's there. So you'd play phone tag for a couple of weeks just to get a couple of questions answered.
Sure. Okay. Regent Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You both mentioned the transfer issue, and I had the highest hopes that that was behind us with the common nursing curriculum. So can you describe that maybe in a little more detail to me?
Well, it wasn't so much the credits, but when you looked at the breakdown of your bill, they charged each one of us a $30 application fee that had already been paid through MSU COT. And we called them and we said, you know, we've been told that we're not going to have to pay this $30 application fee. Why did we get charged it? By the time anybody got back to us, it took all 15 of us calling them saying you need to refund this before they would even refund the $30. And I mean, it took several phone calls saying, why are we being charged this? Until I think they finally got tired of hearing from us, so they refunded the $30.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up, perhaps this is a question for Dean Schaefer. At one time, I thought that students in Lewistown or Great Falls or wherever there was an extension program could, at the time that they enrolled in the LPN program, indicate that they intended to, it was kind of like a common admissions process. Do you recall that? And apparently that doesn't exist anymore, where they were admitted to both institutions with the application?
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton, I'm not aware if that exists. I may turn around and look at our nursing faculty and Assistant Dean of Student Services to know if she's aware of that. But outside of the agreements for the initial application admissions and the way we do transmittal of admissions files between all of the MSU campuses, I'm not aware of anything specific for nursing.
Regent Hamilton and commissioners, the transfer between institutions has historically been kind of like a normal transfer between institutions. However, MSU Great Falls and MSU Northern both allow some access through their registrars to the student information system. So the picking up of transcripts and some of those kinds of things are very, very easy between the institutions. I think the transfer issues between nursing programs have been a little bit rough because of the interpretations of what model they're going, because they could pick from those three depending on whether you're a continuous student. And I don't think in the beginning that MSU Northern really considered the Great Falls students as continuing students. They were supposed to be licensed before they could apply. So they're more like the external already practicing LPNs instead of continuing their education. Recently that's changed, however, so now they could seamlessly go in.
Okay, could you identify yourself just for the record so the tape recorder knows who was talking?
Yes, Judy Hay, Assistant Dean of Student Services at MSU Great Falls.
Thank you.
That's all we had to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there others to comment? And then any comment from among the campuses? President Hicswa.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I had several questions that were posed to me during the vetting of this proposal, and I just wanted to let you know that the nursing program in Great Falls will most likely not affect the nursing program in Miles City. Our program is mostly serving local people. We also serve Glendive and Sydney, and our students aren't coming from this side of the state.
Thank you. We'll get the board. Any further questions among the campuses? Oh. Yes, sir.
Yes, Chairman Christensen, Regent Barrett, Northern does not have any reason to deny this request. However, the original intent of why Northern had been in Great Falls for a number of years, a matter of fact, over 50 years, providing ASN degreed people to enter the field. We were basically not allowed to teach the first and second year in Great Falls, and only the fifth and sixth semester. Again, that was dictated by the Board of Regents, I guess, in terms of the historical factor, and it's the other reason why we cannot offer any of our undergraduate programs in Great Falls, because of the first and second year, not being able to offer those to the first and second year. I know there's a nursing shortage. We've tried to eliminate as many barriers as possible for people going through the LPN to the RN. I've only been in the seat for about a year and a half, and I think we've developed some great relationships so far with Great Falls. We have undergone administrative changes there. We do have 3 full-time RNs right there teaching. And last summer's cohort that we started based on the seamless LPN to RN program, we did admit 15 new people into that cohort. 13 finished, 9 of which are employees of Benefis. Benefis did help us financially in that endeavor, and I bet that was probably the best $15,000 that they've invested to get 9 new potential RNs to serve their hospital. Will the 20 affect us in terms of enrollment? I don't know. That's to be seen. On the other hand, I'd just like to go on record to say that that is 20, because the thing with it, in only 20, bottom line is we are, in a way, the biggest challenge handcuffed by not the Board of Regents, not by MSU Northern, not by Benefis, but by the hospital profession in and of itself with the nursing board. I mean, they only allow us X amount of spots in clinicals. They only allow us X amount of spots possibly in terms of entry into the nursing profession. So, you know, there are other issues here that keep us from not expanding programs throughout Montana. And we have that issue at Northern in and of itself. Our hospital in Havre does not have enough clinical spots. And that's why we have to ship students down to Great Falls. We have to ship students to Lewistown to accommodate all the clinicals that we need. We have over 250 majors in our program in nursing. And again, it covers Lewistown, Great Falls, and Havre. And yes, there is some traveling that's needed and necessary. And in a way, it is good to see other communities and work in different environments other than the environment that you may be working in. I mean, we use Nexus down in Lewistown, which is probably has an international, or at least United States reputation of drug rehab and psychiatric evaluation. But we will cooperate. We will try to work without question closely with Great Falls. Hopefully we'll get their excess, and we will continue to grow our nursing program in Great Falls.
Thank you, Chancellor. Any more from among the campuses? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board and have discussion. Let me say, for the benefit of those of you who are not on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, I'll just give you a little background, because we actually have discussed this at some length, and I'm sure we'll discuss it more today. When this first came up, I, in fact, my initial reaction was twofold, well, 3. My first, it was, I agree with what everybody said about the critical shortage of nurses facing our country, so everything we can do to facilitate dealing with that, we need to do. However, I know that we are constantly concerned about program duplication, and of course, one of the main roadblocks in the nursing programs are access to the clinical component. So we asked a lot of questions. We wound up having a couple extra phone calls on this with the committee. I don't remember if everybody was on every call. I had asked the Great Falls to provide detailed spreadsheets of what they did. They did that. Asked them detailed questions about the impact of the clinical component on Northern and Bozeman, just to be sure there wasn't anything. And they have convinced me that those things are there, but we didn't just let this come. We asked a lot of extra questions because it is a critical question, whether there'd been any of those kind of roadblock impacts. As far as the student load, you know, none of us have a crystal ball. It seems like the nursing slots will all get filled. They're great jobs and people are looking for them. But I wanted you to all know that we've gone through a lot more questioning about the financial viability and then the clinical component than maybe we might normally have done. But having said that, now questions first among the committee and then among the board in general. Regent McClean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, but I think it would benefit us all to hear from Dr. Cech about where this ASN fits into the nursing programs across the Montana University system. And Dr. Hicswa and Dr. Trokey touched on that from their prospective institutions. But this was key information and dialogue for me as we considered this as well. So if you would indulge that, please.
It's your call. We'd be happy to.
Chairman Barrett, members of the board, Commissioner Stearns, with the adoption of the model nursing curriculum a few years ago, which involves the Nursing Pathways 3-year program, beginning with students who complete the first 2 years of the program being eligible for the PN exam, and then the 3rd year of the program being eligible to sit for the NCLEX RN exam and complete the ASRN 2-year degree, associate degree. We now have those model programs set up strategically around the state, and there is definitely a need and a need that will develop for the graduates of those ASN programs to continue on to pursue BSN degrees. The ASN nurse is very much focused on the nursing floor, and to move into leadership positions, they will very likely need to pursue a BSN. And MSU Northern has an ASN to BSN completion program, as does U of M Montana Tech. Northern's is online, so looking strategically down the road for the future, there is definitely an opportunity for MSU Northern to examine how they can really reach out to those ASN programs around the state and provide opportunities for those nurses. They already have those opportunities, but to down the road scale up to provide additional opportunities for those nurses to complete their BSN. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from among the board? Regent Hamilton was first. He's deferring you. She's deferring you.
Okay, thank you. President Cruzado, ultimately we ask you to oversee both of these institutions. I'd be curious, sort of your take on the balance and the blend and what's right for your side of the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have had extensive conversations about this topic with several units, and I need to start by saying that when I have met with our nurses in the bachelor's program, they wanted me to understand, and therefore I think they would love for you to also understand that they are truly committed to 4-year education for all nurses in Montana. They want to make sure that we do communicate that while associate degrees in nurses do help a lot, They want to make sure also that we facilitate these pathways to our associate degrees so that nurses can truly benefit and therefore also enhance care to our patients. I have communicated to them that I understand that message completely, and that I also understand that at this moment we have an urgent need that we need to ameliorate in the state of Montana. My concern, as yours, was to make sure that I did not shortchange the capacities of one campus, in this case Northern, by opening this opportunity for Great Falls. I have been provided with the assurances that that is not the case. And in that sense, I'm truly committed to the one university system and to make sure that every campus in Montana State University reaches its potential. If I may, two more comments. The faculty in Northern has been absolutely exceptional. Just last week, as a response to a Monday morning memo, 2 students from Northern wrote to me, because I usually let people know when the Board of Regents is meeting and when there are items that might be of interest. And it was fascinating to see that 2 students from Northern, on their own volition, wrote to me to let me know about the quality of that program. So kudos to Northern for taking such good care of our students. It is also reassuring because last year, when I had an opportunity to go around every campus in my listening sessions, the nursing students in Great Falls showed so much leadership. I have shared with this same board the anecdote about the request for a cadaver and how we made that happen and how they are so I did not ask for volunteers. But how they are so jealous about the quality of their program. And one final note. When I take a look at our healthcare programs, and President Armstrong and I were talking about this yesterday, we need to say thank you to our partners around the state in the form of those regional hospitals that partner every day with us. In Havre, in Billings, in Bozeman, in Missoula, in Kalispell, all around the state to make sure that we provide our students with the quality of education that they expect and deserve. So I stand in full support of this proposal from MSU Great Falls.
Thank you. Regent Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions for Dean Schaefer. Dean Schaefer, on our conference call, I mentioned the board's higher education center policy, and that requires in Great Falls and Helena that if you are offering a program that's currently available through a campus in that community, that you consult with those other providers. And traditionally, that's resulted in early communication and either letters of support or non-support from those campuses that have been submitted with the board packet information. Can you tell me if you went through that process on this particular project? And I guess when I process, I think back to elementary ed in Great Falls when the higher education center director actually wrote a letter to the University of Great Falls and said, you know, we have this new program that it would like to be delivered in Great Falls, and do you feel that this competes with your program? So could you talk to me about that process as far as this proposal goes?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton. And as I mentioned on that phone call, I do think I need to have my own education on how that policy applies in conjunction with the other processes that we have in place for academic program proposals. But I understand your question, and what I can tell you that our process for both announcing our interest in this program and the process for moving through both the general awareness, the study, and the research of the program has complied with both your policies on new academic program proposals and those with the Board of Nursing. In addition to that, we have had numerous informal conversations that included members from MSU Northern. I can think of one that happened with President Cruzado last March, I believe, at the Dillon Board of Regents meeting, where we announced our intention to pursue this program. We convened a joint meeting in Fort Benton of regional healthcare providers and the campuses from Great Falls, MSU Bozeman's College of Nursing in Great Falls, MSU Northern, and many of the fine folks from Benefits who are here. There again, we announced our interest and heard their interest from that as well. And then certainly through the process of the feasibility study, where we notified the nursing programs, where we notified the Board of Nursing, had the conversation and approval by the Board of Nursing, then through the level 2 process here at the Board of Regents level, where we notified the campuses and went through that process, and then in a phone conversation that we set up specifically with Chancellor Trokey and Deputy Commissioner Moore, Deputy Commissioner Cech, and others on the phone with that. So I believe that we have had that communication. Did I specifically call or send a letter to Chancellor Trokey to ask him about this? No, I did not. I was clear that Chancellor Trokey was not excited about seeing us add this at this program. Our previous conversations had led to that. I will pause and also say to both Chancellor Trokey and Provost Templeton's credit, in the last 6 months to a year, they have done a lot of work to engage many of the LPN graduates in the Great Falls community. And again, I want to reiterate that we believe that there is unmet need, backlog need, and we see an opportunity for all of these programs to prosper. So with that, Regent Hamilton, I don't know if I answered your question, but I believe we did due diligence in the communication process.
Yeah. Specifically, lest it sound like we only communicate internally within the system, did you have any conversations, and maybe these people were involved at your Fort Benton meeting, but with the University of Great Falls, which has a baccalaureate program? I know it's all online, but at some point they may be interested in something different. And with Carroll College, who also uses Benefits for clinical programs?
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton, we did not have direct conversation or communication with Carroll College outside of the Board of Nursing process, which requires that we notify those campuses and then go through the approval process there. The University of Great Falls and MSU Great Falls actually have a very good working relationship. We're well aware of their BSN completion program that predominantly targets Providence Health Services nurses, and have expressed our interest there as well in finding that pathway for ASRN students in the Great Falls community to access the BSN completion program. And one of the things, I'll echo what Deputy Commissioner Cech said about having Northern actually expand their online BSN completion program to the community of Great Falls. I think there's great opportunity. So outside of the Board of Nursing communications with Carroll, there's been no other. With the University of Great Falls, we've had conversations. They participate in some community education groups that we work with.
And as far as, Mr. Chairman, a follow-up question. For the LPNs that are contemplating moving to a ASRN program, I'm remembering back, Dean Schaefer, to the original, what Deputy Commissioner Barber used to call Gin Tuesdays or Gin Thursdays or whatever it was. There was a great deal of concern expressed from the campuses that had LPN programs about ASRN programs actually constricting the supply of LPNs, and in fact that's why a lot of the ASRN programs required that students sit for the LPN and pass the LPN exam before they could be admitted to the RN program, specifically for that reason, to address both hospital concerns and academic program concerns about the availability of LPNs. From your perspective, have you experienced any of that, and are you concerned about that with an additional expansion in the ASRN area?
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton, one of the concerns, I'll echo your comments, one of the concerns that many individuals had with the 3-year state standard curricula is that the students, to go one more year with seek that RN, and there wouldn't be the incentive to do that. The way campuses adopt this program, though, may incent or decent that. We have a long, long history of the practical nursing program. I believe we started in 1961, and what I can tell you is our community and my nursing faculty would lynch me if I did anything that would deter people from stepping out as an LPN if that is indeed what they want. To that end, what we plan to do is implement, I believe it's the 2+1 or the 1+1 approach, where students will apply to get into the LPN component of this, and then they will complete that, and they need to be eligible to sit for their exams because of the timing of when the exams often take place in August. For them to do that, have the results back to actually become licensed LPNs, then to enter the program is problematic. So they will need to be eligible, and then they will have to reapply to enter the third year of the program. And we do this for two reasons, well, really three. One, to allow students to truly step out if they want, achieve their practical, their LPN, and go to work. Two, we believe that there's an opportunity to send a message about a stackable credential approach to nursing that we would like to see the BSN component. But then three, to make sure we provide a competitive opportunity for other nurses, other LPNs that are currently in the marketplace to come back to school and apply and have a chance to get into this program. So communities that, or campuses that have gone with the straight RN approach really, one, don't encourage the LPN stop out, and then two, don't make it as easy for working LPNs to step back in to complete their RN.
And Mr. Chairman, one final question for today anyway. The issue that's been raised about cost and inconvenience in having to do clinicals in another location, having to pay a greater tuition or additional fees in order to be able to receive a program at home rather than from someplace else. I'm a little concerned about equity, and I have a kind of a basic understanding of, for instance, how much students in Lewistown pay for the nursing curriculum versus how much students in Great Falls pay or would pay for this ASN program. And you know, we lots of times have the conversation about duplication, and it's because of people are place bound, and it's hard for me from Eastern Montana to appreciate, I mean, and I do appreciate the fact that you have families and you have jobs and you have to leave in order to do this, but so do people in Malta and Glasgow and Lewistown. And there's a certain advantage, I think, in the diversity of clinical experiences that take you to a smaller hospital where someday you may want to work or you may end up working, rather than have the full clinical experience in one location. So can you talk to me a little bit about the thought process that went into that in developing this proposal and taking it to the State Board of Nursing?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton. There is no doubt that there are conversations that need to happen in regards to equity, in regards to capacity, in regards to policy that incents participation in certain areas. Those conversations really, I believe, belong in your domain, and I would support them and contribute to them as you see fit with that. I believe our role and my role from the mission of our campus is to respond to the needs of our community and of our students. And while I completely agree with you that the diversity of clinical opportunities in a rural setting versus, if you could say, a more urban setting to Great Falls provides some benefit, that benefit goes away if it comes at such a detriment that a student would not participate. And you heard from a couple of fine young ladies who finished with MSU Northern and were able to overcome those barriers. We're more concerned about those that do not participate. And so it is a balancing act. We look at it from the perspective, yes, is there value for traveling? Yes, may that be, is that the reality in some program areas where you must travel to accomplish or to fulfill your program requirements? That may very well be, but it seems we would be remiss if we overlook the opportunity to provide all of that within a local community as a community college for our students. And so for us, the conversation was, do the benefits outweigh the cost of having them travel and do that, having them transfer? And we said no, the benefits of having it all localized in Great Falls for Great Falls residents, for the Great Falls organizations outweigh those other costs. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'd be happy to clarify if I could.
No.
Listen, I guess I would like to comment, or to be sure I understand your question, but it would seem to me that question only has applicability if there's vacancies in these programs. If they're all full, everyone's getting the full experience in any event.
Mr. Chairman, I guess to make a liar of myself, I will ask a follow-up question then of Chancellor Trokey.
Oh, you said one, but
because I've had some conversations with people at Northern, and they've indicated they have capacity for more nursing students in that program. So, Chancellor Trokey, could you comment on that?
Yes, we have capacity in Lewistown, and we can grow in Great Falls. Does that mean that we can not grow in Havre? We're pretty at the full point, but it's a matter of putting people on waiting lists, just like they may do in Bozeman. But that's beside the point. Point being is, yes, we do have excess capacity.
any other questions from among the board? Commissioner Stearns?
Thank you. I have a question that Regent Hamilton reminded me of, and I think it's probably for you, but it may be for Chancellor Trokey. One of the things that Regent Hamilton and I heard on a listening session in Lewistown about 2 or 3 years ago was we were reminded of the extent to which they pay a really high premium for access to the I guess this is probably a Chancellor Trokey question, for access to the, well, for all of us to pay the operation and maintenance of that BLM building that's been converted into a very fine classroom, and particularly nursing classroom, but other kinds of classrooms as well as an extension of MSU Northern. I believe it's $80 a credit hour, as I recall. I mean, it's something that really took me back, and maybe you can remember or confirm that it was rather high for those students in, I think, particularly the nursing program. Maybe someone can help me here. Pardon me? $55 per credit. So that leads to my question that will, in terms of capacity in Lewistown, why would you take classes, nursing classes in Lewistown and pay that extra premium if you could go to Great Falls and not pay it?
Well, because you live there.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think we're getting beyond, frankly,
Okay.
beyond the
Fair
scope.
enough.
The question that's up front of us is a program, and as Dean Schaefer, I think, correctly said, discussions of equity, discussions about how we might posture things, that's another discussion. We have a program in front of us, and that's what's the topic of discussion today. So are there any more comments or questions from among the board? Then I guess I would ask the committee whether we want to recommend this for approval to the board tomorrow or not. You say yes? You've not yet made up your mind? You obviously have a right to ask as many questions as you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for President Cruzado, because I know you're in the middle of this integration project, and some of the concerns we heard from students had to do with transcripting and transfer and travel, and all that kind of comes together in the whole cost of education conversation. So do you see in the near future where the program from the LPN to the ASN to whatever kind of BSN program a student might choose would indeed be more seamless as a result of this project?
Mr. Chair, Regent Hamilton, that is certainly one of the things that we want to accomplish. That is one of the goals of the MSU Integration Initiative. We need to start with elements as basic as allowing each campus to have access to student records, and so that proper advising starts to take place. We have a wonderful dean in the School of Nursing in Bozeman, Dr. Melland, and she's truly committed to making sure that these conversations happen and that they also integrate our programs in Missoula, our programs in Kalispell, so that we really meet the needs of the state of Montana. So the answer is absolutely yes. It is a very difficult conversation, however, I need to say, because as you know very well, we were not acting in very coordinated manners before, but thanks to the impetus that this Board of Regents has provided to questions about transferability and the opportunities to build stronger university systems, we're getting there.
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Could you give me an idea, President Cruzado, of what the timeline might be for that? For instance, if we were to table this proposal until May or September or whatever, would you have an opportunity to advance that so that it would be more seamless and so that students in Great Falls' LPN program would be recruited and have the appropriate information, both financial and academic, to move into an ASN program and where it might be located in the MSU side of the system? Or are we talking 10 years out here?
I'm sure we're talking more than May.
Mr. Chair and Regent Hamilton, I had a conversation last week with Jim Rimpo about this very same question. And because I'm a little bit impatient about the slow pace in which we have embraced these conversations. However, it's just that we're building a system from the inside out, and those conversations do need time, and particularly we need to build the necessary trust among the campuses, and particularly even build the necessary confidence in the software that supports all these conversations. So I do not anticipate that we will be able to have this ready by May. You have my assurance that I will continue to press on. I think that I would hate for us to procrastinate in any way, shape, or form when I know that we have students waiting, and I know that we have hospitals that desperately need to have additional students complete this program.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chancellor Trokey.
Well, just a point of clarification, Chairman Christensen, Chairman Barrett. The LPN, because since 2005, the work on the seamless program between LPN and ASN does exist, and we've eliminated all those barriers for transfer already. A matter of fact, when we talk about whether or not a person has to sit for the licensing portion after they finish the LPN, MSUN has taken that out of the qualifications because we felt that is unfair, because we don't ask our students on campus to do the same thing. We just let them go through the 6 semesters. So therefore, we've eliminated that barrier or that challenge. We've also tried to eliminate any and all travel for the Lewistown people, for the Great Falls people, and for the Havre people as much as possible.
Thank you, Chancellor. So I guess I go back to the original question. Are we prepared to recommend this to the full board tomorrow for approval? You said yes. You had one more question.
No, I'd say go ahead and take it forward. I probably won't support it. That's fine.
Okay, well, then we'll report to the committee, as they all now know, at 2-1, we are favoring moving it forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if
yes, ma'am.
I can take advantage of this opportunity for some notes of appreciation. I want to thank John Cech and Sylvia Moore for facilitating these conversations among our campuses. They have done an extraordinary job. I also want to thank the faculty from MSU Northern and MSU Great Falls and the administration for their full collaboration with this proposal. And I also want to say I am very impressed by, as I mentioned before, the partnership with our hospitals, but I really want to take advantage of the fact that our partners from Benefis are here, and to say thank you for all you do for Montana State University healthcare programs, because you really make a difference. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, thanks to the students who came here today to tell us their stories and for choosing this career, and for being so courageous and showing this leadership, and for taking care of us in the future. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And some of it should be taken, care of sooner than others. Okay, our next item, we have consent items A through E. Are there any items that anybody wishes to remove from the consent agenda and move to the action item agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'd entertain, the question would be whether we recommend moving the consent items forward for recommending their approval tomorrow. Okay, that's it. The next are the information items. Deputy Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett and members of the Regents. The Choices That Count pathway came from the College Now initiative led by Dr. Mary Moe before Dr. Cech came into that. When Dr. Moe left in November, she handed that baton off to me to shepherd that back to you. And I have to say that I promised her I would try to have it on that November agenda, and March, November, it's reasonably close. We slowed the process down just a little bit to get our General Education Council involved and to make sure that all of the academic officers and the faculty on the campuses had a chance to get involved, comment, talk about where we would go with this. One of the things with the Choices That Count pathway, it has made a mark nationally. We had an email this morning from Heidi Pasek, who is the academic officer for Montana State University, Great Falls. And she is at a Northwest Commission meeting where Deputy Secretary of Education Martha Cantor called out the work that Montana is doing on Common Course numbering and on transfer. And this is part of that effort. In addition, Dr. Cech and I and Dr. Bill McGregor were at Wichita just this last week talking about having a regional passport for the Corps, where perchance we could begin to trust our partners not only internally in the state, but also interstate from our neighbors to say, maybe we all can get together and decide what at least the basic 30 hours of a general education curriculum look like. And that's going to be known as the Passport Initiative, and we're moving forward to work on that. And it's coming at a time when the Commissioner and I actually work on things sort of side by side, and then we eventually cross. We are looking also in general education since 2007, before I got here, in essential learning outcomes, or the LEAP initiative, if you will, from the AAC&U. And what we're discovering as we talk about trusting one another on what is the core of a liberal education, that if we focus on outcomes and we don't focus on bean counting or the numbers, that we then are looking content to content. And one of the unique things about the transfer initiative in the Montana University system is that not only did we number the same, but we also looked at, can we start defining at least 85% shared outcomes? And so Montana sometimes is a much more progressive place, I think, than we give ourselves credit for being. One of the things that I kidded Lynette Brown in our office about is that when I'm out of the office and the Commissioner decides to order pamphlets, to please put that on hold until I come back in, because I know what she will do is that she will pass those pamphlets to me and say, you know, we should put these to good use someplace. But fortunately, this time we were channeling each other. She can fire me later. You realize I'm on a non-renewable contract here. But she actually found through her colleagues a What is Liberal Education brochure that had come out. And we had decided today that our Board of Regents should have one or more copies of these pamphlets. And then we're going to charge people at this meeting with taking these back to the campuses and making sure that we continue this dialogue and make sure that all of us understand the quality component that we're talking about in the education that is offered in the Montana University system. So that's a rather long-winded approach to talking about the Choices That Count pathway. If Bill McGregor were here, he would let you know that The General Education Council is very supportive of this as an advising tool to try to get all of our students to think more about ways to stay focused and get to completion with their degrees without compromising the foundational core that they need to get those essential outcomes. And this tool will help people decide for the major that they think they wish to pursue, which of those courses are most likely to be the ones that are needed inside of that major as well as for the general education core. So it just, it tickles my heart really to go back to these meetings and find out that I can pull up our website and point to things that Montana is doing that really has us in the forefront, and that's the people who came in front of me. I would like to acknowledge that there are members of the General Education Council from all the campuses, and I want to thank the chancellors and the academic officers for allowing those people to serve. And one of the things that we've done for sustainability, because College Now may not be here for beyond the grant period, is to task the General Education Council with making sure that the Choices That Count pathway is shepherded by them, updated by them, made better by them, and we will be working with our regional partners to look at other ways that we can leverage this tool into getting more degrees and more people into higher education. With that, I would take any questions or comments.
Regent McClean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Moore, for your presentation. And I just want to commend you for the work, you and the General Ed Council for your work on this. My first question is there a high school teacher on the General Ed Council?
Regent McClean, Chairman Barrett, no, there is not a high school teacher on the Gen Ed Council. That's a really good idea. I don't know why we couldn't extend it to that and help in that K-12 thing. That's a good idea.
Well, well, thank you, but I think that the reason that I was asking is I was looking down these classes, and so many of them are dual enrollment classes, and so it seems like that would be a natural direction to move in. And I was just wanting clarification on who would be writing the essential learning outcomes, and if you said it, I'm sorry if I missed it.
Regent McClean, Chairman Barrett, no, I did not say. The outcomes are decided by the faculty, and one of the things that Montana did correctly was to convene the faculty in our FLOCs, those faculty learning outcome councils. It was clear at the regional meeting where we were in Boulder that that's a part that has to be continued, and as they move forward with any regional concepts, it will be with engagement of faculty. There is a long tradition in higher education of the faculty owning the curriculum, and they are wisely given that challenge. They have that background, and so we want to be sure that they're working with us, and we're not dictating to them what the curriculum should be, but they're informing us and working together.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for President Engstrom?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I would just like to add a little bit onto what Deputy Commissioner Moore has been saying about the AAC&U organization. Associate Provost Arlene Walker-Andrews not too long ago took a team of faculty members to AAC&U workshop, if you will, on this topic of general education and how to move forward in thinking about undergraduate education for the 21st century. And a part of that process was actually sitting for 2 days with who turned out to be the president of AAC&U, interacting with that faculty group, and they developed a very exciting proposal about how we move undergraduate education forward in today's world. You'll be hearing more about that over the next several months from our campus.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chair. I will tell you that some of our student lobbyists were shocked to see this prominent pamphlet that said, "What is a liberal education?" because of the most common perception anymore that the word liberal has currency in a political world, as you know, in opposition to the term conservative, as opposed to the going back to the Greeks and beyond of sort of the broadly, broad education term of the liberal arts and sciences. So I think that was, we have lots of copies of these. You got a bargain if you ordered 500. So we do hope that they will be picked up by the Gen Ed councils and used by faculties with their, distributed among faculties to see if they can find them useful in their advising or in their conversations with students who not all of whom, many of whom, even in the upper division level, are unfamiliar with the phrase liberal education out and don't realize it's not a political construct. Thank you.
Thank you. And for further comments on this topic? Okay, we'll continue. Deputy Commissioner Moore.
At this point, I think I would turn to Regent Bornpal to introduce Zach for the next item. Would you like to do that?
Zach Regala is a member of MESA, which is the Montana Environmental Students Association, and he is a graduate of Montana State University and is currently attending graduate school at the University of Montana. So, Zach.
Is that better? Cool. So thank you, Chairman and Board. So just a brief 5-minute update.
Introduce yourself for the.
Sure.
So it's on the microphone, so it's on the tape.
Name is Zach Rogala, graduate student in the philosophy department. I have an easy job. I'm here not asking for anything, just telling you what we've been doing in the last year. Being a student group, we start with nothing and we usually end with that. So any positive gain for us is good. It's been a good year. Who are we? We are a coalition of all the sustainability focus groups from every 4-year and 2-year institution in the state. We have representatives from over 6 campuses. Just tell you about some of the projects we've been working on. Joe Krenzer at MSU-BILLINGS, developing a solar array with a partnership of Northwestern Energy. They've raised over $30,000 to install a 5-kilowatt system this coming summer, I believe. Amanda Haggerty with the Western program, working on a week-long Earth Week celebration, which is now in their 3rd or 4th year. Blake Bjornson, who is running unopposed as ASMSU president this coming year at MSU, is working on a revolving energy loan fund similar to what passed with Patrick Ray and several other students in the last 4 years. Patrick Ray, as well, student, not running unopposed for ASUM president, but we're wishing him luck, I guess. And he's, anyone from if you haven't heard of Patrick Ray, you're lucky, because he's usually pounds on doors all too often. Some of our other members, 3 folks are in Cincinnati competing at the National Ethics Bowl tournament. They've gone undefeated so far, and they're in the semifinals currently. And I guess what I'm here to talk to you about today is we have a MESA summit that we have for this weekend that I'm inviting all of you to attend. It's organized by a sophomore in Montana. His name is Zach Brown, and as well as folks here at Carroll College, Laura Desteri and the SAVE Foundation. So we have secured Governor Schweitzer, Attorney General Bullock, Senator Tester, past Congressman Pat Williams, past legislator Dorothy Bradley, current legislator Frankie Wilmer, as well as multiple academic department leaders from MSU, from from Carroll. And so our goal is, we have a 3-day conference, bringing in students and high schoolers from across the state, and just trying to stimulate discussion on all these topics. Our goal is to, 1, not reinvent the wheel, work with folks, and disseminate information. So projects like the Revolving Energy Loan Fund, we can transfer directly from Missoula to Bozeman. Like your climate action plan, at MSU, being engineers, we're trying to improve upon this. We're just trying to streamline processes. So that's our goal. And I guess just with this last year, we'd like to thank the relationships we've developed with administration. We pride ourselves on working within the system, not standing on the outside and throwing stones at people. And that's really about it. So if you have any questions, I could take some of those. If not, thank you for the time. Yeah.
No questions? Okay.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Deputy Commissioner Moore.
Our next information item is from Student Financial Services, and Bruce Marks will do a quick presentation on a couple of scholarships.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bruce Marks with your Office of Student Financial Services. It's my privilege this afternoon to give you a very brief update on two different scholarships, one new and one continuing. The first scholarship is really, I think, thanks to the efforts of Tom Gibson. Tom is an officer within the Big Sky chapter of the Association of of Certified Fraud Examiners. And actually, do we have a slide? This particular scholarship is a $1,000 award. It'll go to two different students, one each at University of Montana and Montana State. It's an upper division scholarship, and I believe it's a 4-year commitment, 5-year commitment. That's great. And again, I think it really is thanks to the efforts of Tom. So Tom deserves our gratitude and thanks. The other scholarship seems very timely given the nature of the conversation earlier. It's the New West Healthcare Scholarship, and it goes to up to 12 students for either $1,000 or $2,000. We're actually in the 4th year of this program, and just a couple of interesting or nice features about this scholarship. It also is available to graduate students, and there's very little aid other than student loans that's available for graduate students, so that's a nice benefit. And it also is available to all of our schools in Montana, tribal and also private. With that, Mr. Chairman, be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Marks? Comments? Thank you, Bruce. Deputy Commissioner Moore.
Our next item is one that got put on my agenda because Deputy Commissioner Robinson didn't want it. So I'm always happy to build my empire. But yeah, I'm working on it.
Too much caffeine?
Too much caffeine for me. Rolf, I think you've got this one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Rolf Groseth, Chancellor at Montana State University Billings, and I want to spend just a minute or two talking to you about some planning that we have been doing in our auxiliary facilities, our housing and athletic facilities. And in a minute, this is going to be the when we had our decennial visit from the Northwest Commission on Colleges in 2008, they commented on the age and condition of some of our facilities, particularly our athletic, recreational, and housing facilities. And so we started a process to plan, and were authorized by the Commissioner to begin a master planning process for these activities in June of 2009. And we began by engaging A&E Architects from Billings, which is a firm that's done lots of work on several of our campuses. And they put together a team which included Sanderson Stewart, consulting engineers, a firm specializing in institutional food service. They do campuses and university campuses and campuses for Microsoft and et cetera. And Brailsford and Dunleavy, which is a national firm which specializes in university housing. Our residence halls in particular, and student union and our athletic facilities were built in the 60s, and they look it. We have 700,000 square feet, and in many of our areas, the amount of deferred maintenance is greater than 10%. That's what the poor indicates. We set forth an agenda to determine the strategic asset value of these facilities, doing some focus groups, some surveys. In the focus groups, we had about 130 students participate in those. I asked them lots of questions. In the surveys, we had about 700 students who completed surveys about our residence hall and student union and recreation and athletic facilities. We did decided on a set of campuses to benchmark against, looked at the demand on our campuses, looked at some site considerations and financials, and then are moving on to next steps. In the strategic asset value analysis, the priority order of our space needs, we decided that auxiliary spaces for all students were needed, that spaces should provide flexibility for use, continued development of shared facilities. Our facilities certainly are shared, particularly our athletic and recreational facilities where we have teams that are practicing and intramural activities that go from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. We decided that we would look for some quick wins if we could, and then also develop some strategies for long-term investment. We hoped that in part we would be able to use some initial investment to spur growth, particularly in our residence hall facilities. This is sort of a, if you build it, they will come philosophy. We wanted to generate more revenue from our auxiliaries and hope to find some private monies as well. These are the campuses that we decided to benchmark against. And they seem to be reasonable for us, both in terms of size of campus, location of campuses, and the kinds of programs that are offered. This is a chart that shows some of the housing options, and you can see that as you look at these particular campuses, ours is over here on the right side, and most of these campuses have a much greater variety of housing units for their students. If you would have looked at this in 1965, most of these campuses would have had only traditional beds, but a lot of them have built over the past several decades. They have a greater variety of offerings for students, and they've done that because of student demand. We all know that when we went off to college, probably most of us when we were growing up had shared a room in our homes, and if you ask students about that today, none of them have. So their wants and needs are different. Also, I'd like to call your attention to the bottom right-hand number in terms of what that bottom line there, what we are charging our students compared to other campuses. We are way under the cost for other campuses, and to a certain extent that's been very helpful to our students over the years. On the other hand, I think it has prevented us from building some reserves in our housing operation that would help us update and maintain in a better way. We were looking at demand on the main campus, and I think the the result of this is we think there is a greater demand. We're over 100% this fall, and we think there's the possibility that given the creation or updating of facilities, we could get a greater percentage of both freshmen and continuing students to reside in our residence halls. One note that I would like to make is that we currently have about 80 students living in our residence halls who are from the College of Technology. So these are students who commute back and forth from the west end of the city each day. But it does show, I think, that families are interested in sending their students to a campus where they can have supervised housing. The student union demand, these show both the popularity that students attach to these certain activities and also the importance that they attach to them. The stars indicate some of the activities that we've already made some progress on and that are currently in the scope of renovation. Recreation demand, you can see that through surveys and focus groups that we did both on the main campus and on the College of Technology. You can see there's a great deal of similarity in the activities that students would like to have and hope that we can provide them. In terms of some site considerations, this is the College of Technology campus on the west end. On the lower right here, this is actually the Career Center of School District 2. And this land that's directly to the north of the Career Center is actually owned by them. There have been conversations going on for a number of years about the possibility in the future of MSU-Billings acquiring that land. And this just shows you, this is our newest building, our health science building. Some of these sort of orangish colors are just really placeholders, examples of where we might be. This building here is the proposed site for the joint Parmley Library and MSU-Billings Library that we hope to construct in the future. But we would hope to enlarge our recreational and athletic facilities, perhaps move our tennis center out to the west end as well. On the main campus, these are our current residence hall and student union facilities. This is our current athletic facilities, the Alterowitz Gym and recreational facilities. And these yellow areas are our proposed new construction or renovation. We are hopeful that we will be able to make some progress beginning as early as this summer. And as I mentioned, some of the work has already been done. These are proposed new residence halls and athletic facilities that would happen over a longer period of time. Finally, we've looked into some phasing, and these are our calendar year projects that we have done. This West End facilities, that renovation has taken place, and that building is now a wonderful new facility, or renovated facility that is in use. That's the original building there. And then we have phased this out over several years, and some of these obviously are, this is a hypothetical, but we want to begin to make progress on it as soon as possible. And some of those will be moved up or back depending on funding. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to give you some idea of what we are thinking about, some things that might happen over the next 2 to 6 or 7 years on the Billings campus. We are very excited about the demand for our programs that has been shown in the last several years, and know that we are going to continue to grow, and we need to be doing planning of all kinds to meet the needs of our current students and those that will come in the future.
Thank you, Chancellor Grosset. Any questions of Chancellor Grosset? Regent Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chancellor Grosset, I'm curious as to why this is an information item, and if you're going to bring it back as an action item to the board at some point. I think the commissioner mentioned this morning that the board approves master plans, and usually it's more from an entire campus growth perspective that we've approved them. This is more select, but I'm wondering what the board's involvement is.
I think the board's involvement will be at each piece of this. We will certainly bring it back for the board's attention and approval, but just wanted to give board members the heads up that we are nearing the final completion of this master planning process that was authorized by the commissioner a couple of years ago, and just to let you know that we've been moving forward and have made some progress. And my observation over the years is that the board likes to be notified about these things in an incremental way, and so this is just really just is an information item. I don't foresee bringing anything back in the immediate future, but these are projects that will likely be brought back before the board.
Yeah, Regent Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. I'm guessing that in any of these projects you don't anticipate having a request for state funds either through bonding or long-range building. But I'm curious about the athletic component of it, because sometimes athletic facilities have a mixed use, both academic and other. So can you talk about that a little?
Yes, I think the athletic and recreational facilities do share those spaces with academic programs. These are auxiliary buildings and have been classified as such, and while we might do some minor renovations to facilities in those buildings that deal specifically with academic programs, those that deal with our athletic and recreational use are auxiliaries.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? Regent Robinson.
Mr. Chairman, Chancellor Grosset, the presentation that you made today, reflecting back to our discussions this morning about the bonding bill, do any of the facilities that you've talked about here in the master plan fit into that bill that's being discussed now?
Wouldn't that be nice? No, because these are auxiliary facilities. They would not fit into a state bonding bill. We would be, which would be a general obligation bond, we would, in the event that we go forward with a major residence hall project, such as we have there listed in calendar year 12, but might move back, those would be revenue bonds that would come for approval, but not general obligation bonds.
Any additional comments or questions? All right, thank you, Chancellor Grosset. Deputy Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett. Our next item, the long-range planning for graduate education, stems from discussions that we have had in our Science and Technology Advisory Committee, and as we were working on developing the latest EPSCoR grant. We are realizing that graduate education really does need to have kind of a long-range look. This is something that bubbled up from the campuses, and I would like to ask Perry Brown, the provost from the University of Montana, to give us just a quick update.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Perry Brown. I'm provost at the University of Montana. I just want to alert you to some activity that is going on right now on the two flagship campuses where we're talking about how we can visualize the future of graduate education within the Montana University system. Very simply because different kinds of programs bubble up at different times. We've come to the idea that maybe we ought to take a look at what the at least near-term future looks like, what we think is most likely to come forward, and try to get a roadmap available so that you can see what kinds of things we're thinking about, what kinds of things might come forward in the future. Given the kinds of conversation that you have had over the last, several months anyway, but certainly longer than that, probably about new programs, program duplication, collaboration among the campuses, we just felt that we needed to maybe build a bit of a roadmap about where we're going, as Deputy Commissioner Moore has suggested. So we're looking at proposed programs, we're looking at the relevance of those particular programs to Montana and to this part of the world. We're looking at the intra-campus collaboration that can occur between colleges on a campus, but we're also looking across the campuses of the Montana University system about the collaboration that can occur. We're looking to see what kinds of programs also might be able to be joint programs where we have one program, but the degree may be offered on more than one campus. So we want to be able to lay this out for you before we start bringing together some programs that are bubbling up from either faculty or from the research committee or coming from student and demand that we have out there or from industry that is asking for certain things. We're trying to put together this longer range picture so that we all have an understanding of how it fits together and where we're going. And so I just wanted to take this moment anyway to let you know that that effort is going on right now so that we can begin to talk particularly about PhD programs, but also the broader issue of graduate programs, and make sure we address some of the issues that have been raised by the regents with regard to collaboration, joint programming, and things of that sort. So I would be happy to answer any questions, but just let you know we're working on a little longer range plan so we can all get a vision of what this might mean.
Well, I guess I would ask, is that what you said about maybe offering those on, taking these kind of advanced programs and offering on two different campuses, as looking ahead, we have a level 2 submission here today, which would be for the May meeting, but we're looking at it today. And I noticed, for example, there's a Master of Arts in Chemistry at University of Montana. I mean, that would seem like an ideal thing that would be offered across, since we have high-level chemistry programs at multiple, well, at least two campuses right as we speak. Is that what you're referring to?
That one is probably less likely to engage in that because that is really a change from a current Master of Science program non-thesis to simply change that one into a Master of Arts without any other implications at all in that one. It's taking an existing program and just converting it from Master of Science non-thesis to a Master of Arts to better serve a particular population that's already doing something like that. But there are other kinds of programs, one of which is the one we've talked about before, is the whole area of special education in education. Absolutely perfect example of what we're talking about, Regent Barrett.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Regent Borenpool?
I just wanted to know how you're collecting information from students about their ideas for long-range planning, and if I could get in on these conversations, because this sounds fascinating.
Sure. Well, very simply, I mean, the information that we're getting right now is that's been bubbling up with regard to programs. So, for example, we have students in individual programs right now that tell us, you know, it would really be better if we had this kind of a program versus the one I'm in, or something like that. So it's really a ground up, bubbling up. It's not a systematic survey or something like that. This is really dealing with the the kind of near-term programmatic changes that are already being talked about by students and faculty and industry people outside. And so we've got a lot of that information, and there are actually proposals that are under development right now, and some that have already gone through governance processes on campuses. So we're not looking at the really long-range picture. On the other hand, with regard to planning, on our campuses, I could probably say this is true on all of our campuses. I know it's certainly true on the University of Montana Missoula campus. On our long-range planning committee, we have student participation on the committee. And so they are out there bringing those ideas to us right for long-range planning. Members of the committee, full-time members of the committee, and I'm getting a nod over here, MSU has the same thing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Regent Barrett?
Deputy
Perry, could you maybe introduce our graduate deans if they're still here in the audience?
Well, I don't know. The one I was going to introduce, the newest one that we have on our campus, actually left to do some work. So it was hard to not that he wasn't doing some work here.
Yeah, we're going to say, yeah, we accept that. We're doing work here.
I'm sorry. I should have phrased it a different way. But Stephen Sprang is the new associate provost and dean of the graduate school at the University of Montana, and he did return to his room to do some other activities, but he'll be at the reception tonight manning one of the tables there. And I don't know if Carl Fox is here. No, he's not here right now. So I'm sorry I can't introduce Carl Fox, the vice provost from MSU Bozeman.
Thank you. At least we got their names on the record, so that's good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett.
Deputy Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Chairman
I like
Barrett.
the way this is working.
I know, it's tag team, isn't it? It's great. I'm not sure the boss is going to let me sit by her anymore, though. So maybe a problem. I have to go back and be fair on something before I move into this topic. The reason that we got the Auxiliary Athletic Master Plan on our agenda was not because Deputy Commissioner Robinson was really trying to get rid of it. He felt it fit better with us because it related to an accreditation issue. Am I out of trouble? Okay. Moving on. Strategic resource alignment is something you've been hearing somewhat ad nauseum from me, and also a little bit of that maybe from some of our board members. And I think we're making great strides in the kinds of ways that we're trying to look once again at efficiencies in our campuses and how we move forward in constrained times. One of the things that we did about a year ago was have a webinar on prioritizing academic programs and services, and we all have seen the book. And I had a highlighted copy that was an old edition, then we got new editions. There will also be, in summer, if you pull up that reference to the session that's coming in June, Dickinson is doing a workshop in Denver in June that he's particularly inviting campus teams to attend. So I know as both the UM campuses and the MSU campuses are working in this arena, it is an opportunity for an outside look at the processes and the way that we might do this. Commissioner Stearns and I and the regents have looked at how do we bring this discussion to the table? How do we assure one another that we are already doing some things in this arena? And I have to apologize that the month of February apparently was much shorter than any of us anticipated, and we didn't really get as much chance to discuss this internally as we would have liked, but we do think that it is something that's helpful to keep bringing up when the regents can kind of give us some guidance. And so to that regard, I get to do the fun part of shifting this discussion off to our presidents, and I did warn them, this morning that this might happen. And so if President Engstrom, if you would like to jump in.
Mr. Chairman, Deputy Commissioner Moore, thanks for the opportunity to comment on this. I'd like to begin by just talking about our existing program review process and what does it really accomplish, ask the question, what does it really accomplish? So as you know, we go through this periodic program review every 7 years or so for each program and bring to you the results of those reviews. Those reviews are quite intensive, usually taking that particular program the better part of the year to prepare for it. They, depending on the campus, many of them, if not most of them, bring in an external consultant to go through the program. Then that program review is analyzed by that consultant, by the provost's office, usually by the faculty senate through the graduate council, whatever is appropriate, and then brought to you. And you see the results of those in a summarized form when they come forward. Some good things happen out of those program reviews. Some really good things happen out of them. Let me give you a couple of examples. The last program review of our journalism program, for example, indicated to them that the broad generalized master's program in journalism probably could be rethought and be made more effective through additional focus. As a result, the journalism faculty spent really a year and a half, if not more than that, redesigning their graduate program and turned it into an environmental and science journalism master's program. We brought that back to you as an agenda item some time ago, and it passed. And so now they have brought in their first class of environmental and science journalism students. It's a class that represents some people who have journalism as an undergraduate background, but most of the people have something other than journalism as their undergraduate background: biology, chemistry, environmental studies, those kinds of areas. And they put them through, those students who don't have a journalism background go through really a summer boot camp to give them the journalism basics, and then they go into this environmental and science journalism master's program. Really a nice development, and that was something that came directly out of one of the program reviews. On a smaller scale, but just as important, the wildlife biology program went through a program review, and one of the things that came out of that was that the external consultant said, you have a gap in your expertise in wildlife biology, and that is in the area of quantitative ecology. And so when the next opportunity for a faculty line came open, the wildlife biology folks, in fact, decided to do a search for a quantitative ecologist, and they're in the process of hiring that person now. So these program reviews do result in significant change, change for the better, and they are focused on the quality of the program. But they happen on this 7-year cycle, and so it is really, I think, the time, given what you all have been talking about the last couple of years, and with new leadership in the university system, to really focus on a focused program alignment exercise. So you say alignment with what? Well, alignment with the institution's strategic plan, with the institution's strategic directions. And so on the Missoula campus, let me just give you an example. This year, we have been building on the previous 2 years of sector-level strategic planning, and so I think you saw some time ago the academic strategic plan that came out of the Missoula campus. There's a student affairs strategic plan, there's a facilities strategic plan, and so on. So this year, in the last 4 months, we have been focusing on bringing together really the comprehensive strategic plan for the University of Montana at the Missoula campus. That, you will see that rolled out on May 2nd, actually, so I'll just give you a heads up there. And so now then we will have a comprehensive strategic plan to guide the University of Montana Missoula campus. The next stage then is to ask our academic programs to go through an alignment exercise and ask themselves very carefully, how does your program align with the strategic directions of the university? We are deliberately calling it an alignment exercise as opposed to a program prioritization exercise, which is what the book is about, and I commented on that, I think, a year or so ago in my position as provost, that I felt it would be a more constructive process to think about program alignment with the strategic plan as opposed to making a list of program priorities and lopping off the bottom of that list as resources allow or don't allow, as the case may be. So I have asked Provost Brown to begin the process of designing a program alignment process that will begin with the next academic year and take a look at all of our programs, undergraduate, graduate, and essentially ask the question, are you as a program optimally aligned with the strategic direction of the University of Montana Missoula campus? We expect that process to result in quite a few adjustments. Frankly, not very many program eliminations because we don't feel like we have a lot of programs on our campus that are irrelevant or unaligned or unalignable, if you will, with the strategic direction. But there may be the occasional program that in the end we conclude, for whatever reason, this program doesn't align or won't align well with where we're headed in our strategic directions and take appropriate action. On the more positive side, though, we also expect to identify programs that not only align with the strategic direction, but really symbolize that strategic direction and have the potential to really rise to the level of programs of national distinction. And so that will be a part of our program alignment process, identifying programs of national distinction that we will then focus resources and energy into to bring them up to an even greater level than they are now. So that process we will kick off with the next academic year on the Missoula campus. I'll also have discussions with the other campus CEOs to ask the question, when does it make sense to really do that on your campus? And some of them may be ready to do that now. Some of them maybe want to work on their strategic plans a little bit more before we go down that road. So that is what we have in mind for a program alignment activity on the UM campuses. Thank you.
Regent Barrett, if I might, I would have to say that I've listened to President Ekstrom, and if you notice, the agenda item does say strategic resource alignment and not program prioritization. So I'm trying to take that out of my vocabulary. I haven't got him to change the title of his book yet.
Did you ask both presidents to comment?
I did, if President Cruzado
You're not required,
is welcome.
but you may.
Sure. Well, after this morning lecture on chemistry, I'm going to come back and ask for equal time for a lecture in literature. But that will happen at a later date. We have been looking at these opportunities both in the academic side of the house as well as the administrative type of the house, side of the house, in part because we were impelled by our accreditation report when it noted that one of the areas of opportunities for Montana State University was this tension between critical needs and available resources. As I mentioned before, we're using the integration initiative as that opportunity to work collaboratively with the 4 campuses and start looking at some of the administrative economies of scales that we can provoke by asking questions such as, do we need to have 4 payroll systems concurrently? Do we need to have 4 different academic calendars? Are there some areas where we can come and coincide and take a fresh look at these resources? At the same time, we're also starting a similar conversation in the Bozeman campus, because I have also discovered that there are some areas where we really need to realign our resources. For example, technology. We have 32 different servers at this moment in the Bozeman campus, and I think that that's a wonderful opportunity for us to ask the question, do we need to have all those resources? Or can we do more with less? Can we talk about common pools of money that then can enable us to aspire to have better equipment, more powerful programs, and to better serve our faculty, our staff, and our students. We're also taking a look in the administrative side as the business support for the research component. This is a very large operation at Montana State University in Bozeman with $110 million, but it begs the question, do we need to have an accountant in each department? Are there some more centralized and coordinated ways in which we can reallocate those resources? That's on the administrative side. On the academic side of the house, we will start this exercise also taking the accreditation report as a point of departure, where they encouraged us to take a look at our outcomes assessment. The recommendation was made that we need a centralized outcome assessment effort, and that will certainly give us the necessary guidance to take a look at our academic programs. As you know, we have a new provost at Montana State University in Bozeman, and she's certainly committed to work with the faculty, and we are going to invite and encourage ample faculty participation. Our faculty senate will have to play a prominent role in these conversations about academic prioritization of our programs. Thank you.
Thank you. I can say my comment is I think to a degree that, you know, we're still kind of talking apples and oranges here a little bit. That is, alignment, I understand what you're saying, and again, like I said, it's always dangerous to give someone like me one book and no years of experience and let me read it. And so I do try to take myself with a grain of salt on this. But, you know, alignment and prioritization are two different things, or you know, how you're doing that, assessment, whatever you want to call it. Almost implicit the way you were expressing that is that, like, there are no value judgments going on about the value of programs. And to, you know, in a certain intellectual way, I agree that there is no class offered that doesn't have some value. I mean, someone can learn something, but President Cruzado said we have to wait. You know, she used it in a different context, but we're talking about critical needs or needs versus available resources, and so we have to make value judgments, and that's, you know, for example, when you described the realignment in the journalism, which was laudable, and I think that's a great program. But where do the value judgments come in? Not about aligning and making a more higher quality program, about the utilization of resource. And that's the discussion I don't think we're having on the campuses, or I'm not seeing it, or not to the degree. You know, I think we really need to look, and I'm making up a number, so it's not, it's just that. But if, I don't know how many on either UM or MSU, the large campuses, and then it'll be a different scale on the smaller ones. There's thousands of different classes taught, and if, you know, we made a value judgment about some quantity, 10%, whatever, I don't think that we should be doing that in an attempt to save money on faculty. On the contrary, I think it's to give those faculty more time to focus on those classes, maybe to have less adjuncts that we need to fill out the broad spectrum of those, and give them a more quality experience. And if there's to use what, you know, they used to joke about when I went to school in the 60s, the underwater basket weaving is not available. It's not, you know. Now, we don't have any of those, of course, but we do have things we can make value judgments about, and that's what I think we're not doing. I hope we decide to participate, or a lot of us participate in that program, and then find a way to bring that to our campuses. And, you know, we're having a meeting tomorrow morning with faculty, and they said, they always come and have a little agenda, and they tell us things and ask us things, and they said they want to know if we'd want to ask, maybe we bring the questions tomorrow. So that's my question. See, you have a chance to think about it. But if we are doing a good job of that, then I need to be educated about it. But I don't see it going on. I don't see us making judgments, and I I listened to a faculty discussion one time. I won't name any names for embarrassing anybody, but they started talking about, they were complaining about the Common Core numbering and everything, and saying, well, we had to come up with we had so many classes, we had to come up with all these different, we had to create new labels to go on them. We had so many, and I know the size of the department, and I thought, what they're telling me is they have way too many classes, because it's not that big a department. You know, anything anybody wants to teach, they're teaching. And again, anything anybody teaches has value. I mean, knowledge is value, so I don't question that. We just have to decide how much value we can afford. So that's my rant on this. But that is my question for tomorrow. Regent Buchanan.
Thanks, Chairman Barrett. Just a couple observations, and I really appreciate that this is not only an agenda item, but a priority that I see us accelerating our focus on, as it is something that I believe can add great value, not only from a strategic alignment, brand development for our universities, and President Engstrom, I just couldn't agree more. I mean, I think this process, what it might do, aside from being a budgetary tool, a tool to help us kind of find things that may be underperforming, it's going to help us find out the things that the students come to our universities for, so that we might elevate the priorities when it comes to investment. But I look at it right now in this process, I mean, we're in the middle of this legislative session where we're wondering if we're going to get funding, and then the discussion as to if we're going to be able to replace the loss of funding. You know, I just don't see 100% apple cart anywhere in the picture. And so from a budgetary perspective, I still am looking for some of the teeth associated with freeing up resources to focus on those strengths. Even if we were in a 100% funding mechanism, and in an environment where we were 100% funded for everything we try to do, we're going to have to come up with some criteria to identify those programs which, one, don't align with the core mission, but more importantly, aren't drawing the type of attention that we thought they may have when we created them. And it's easy to say, well, there's only 2 or 3 students in a program. That may not be as successful or sustainable as we thought. But it's harder, and I think it's still imperative when we say, you know what, on a relative basis, maybe 15, I don't want to pick numbers arbitrarily, but we're going to have a way to say we cannot continue. You've heard me say this, and I'm feeling like this is a broken record on my behalf, but it sounds like we're making progress towards this. We just can't keep trying to do everything. And we're going to need those metrics to say this is not supported by our market as much as other programs that we need to prioritize. And again, it's extremely encouraged to hear the strategic alignment element of the dialogue. We do need to, first and foremost, pick the things that we're the best at, so that we know that those are the things we need to find resources first for. And I think we as a board have a huge role in that. I mean, all of these programs come across our desk, and I'm hearing in the presentation of new programs attention given to that. We're paying attention to those. How does this fit with the mission? Help us understand how this strengthens the mission of each of these institutions. And so it's a board prerogative as well, as each of these potential approvals come across our desk. So I would like to be plugged in as much as I can in on this. I'm not on this committee at the moment, but this conversation is one that I feel is still going to continue to lead us into a more competitive position with the other institutions with which we compete in the higher ed community. So thank you to all the campuses. I know it's not just your 2 campuses, but everybody that's thinking this way. It's going to make us a stronger institution enterprise.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Regents and especially, do I have the mic? Okay. Regent Barrett, I appreciate the opportunity to hear about your questions before tomorrow, so we can think a little bit about that. And that is a topic that faculty deal with, and perhaps when we talk about value, we talk about quality, and I think we're really at a very basic sense talking about a similar concept. But this whole idea of setting strategic priorities based on the unique mission of each of the institutions, I think in some sense gets us closer to what you're talking about in terms of value. And maybe it's sitting around and talking about perhaps those different definitions that we might have of what value might be. It's very exciting to hear that on our campus that we are starting to look at mission alignment with the strategic goals. The faculty is part of that process, and one of the things we're doing in the Faculty Senate is trying to get more faculty involvement of our undergraduate programs to really look at strengthening the ones that need strengthening and adding resources to those that potentially could fit better with that alignment. So I appreciate the opportunity to have those discussions, and it's good to hear those things are happening on both of the campuses.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you do, and I'm glad they're having those discussions. But the one thing I never hear, and for example, what you said was very good, but when you talked about how you decide the value and all those things, the word I never hear in there is also is resource. I mean, that's the thing, is we can talk about all these parts, but we also have to look at that resource side, and that plays into it too, because I don't doubt the quality of programs, but the resource may not allow some of them. Dean Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a couple of brief comments about what we're doing at MSU Great Falls. I think I would be of similar mind with my colleagues here that we've lived in and functioned in a resource-constrained environment. That may be more so in the future, but it is something we've been living in for quite some time. And so, especially in the past few years, when we've looked at doing new things and new programs, it's required us to reallocate. And that often means that we stop doing something. And so, some of you have heard me talk about our shift on our campus towards a model of continuous improvement, really where we want to continually improve meeting our mission, being more effective. To that end, we've established what we call 16 core indicators of institutional effectiveness. These are metrics that we assess on an annual basis to see how well we are doing at achieving our mission. They're the things that we measure. We are currently in the process right now, and I'd be happy to spend more time later to talk about this, of moving that assessment process down to the programmatic level. And the chair of our faculty senate, Leonard Bates, who is here somewhere, our associate dean and chief academic officer, are currently piloting a program review protocol that's objective-based, looking at the measures of effectiveness as they align to our mission for two reasons. The first one is to help us improve, and it is about a continuous improvement first. We believe our programs are valuable and viable. We want to find ways to help them improve. But the second one is, in reality, if and when we come to that point where we have to decide what do we do and what don't we do, we have an objective assessment of everything we do, and those that meet our mission the best or illustrate that we're contributing to our mission the best, we will have a very objective decision point to say, this is why we do it. And so I do think some of these things are happening on campus, and we're getting better at this, especially with Northwest new standards. But the conversation's pertinent. I'd love to share more with you to show you how we're folding this all in. In fact, you'll see it either in May or coming up. We are stopping some programs so that we can do some new things.
Regent Buchanan.
The last thought too that which I forgot to mention, you know, the two perspectives from, or the three perspectives we just heard are a little different in how they're thinking about maybe freeing up resources. My thinking is not limited to academic programs. We have so many things that we do. And, you know, God forbid you don't touch my department or my service, but we have to look past that. And as we do start to juggle resources, and best scenario outcome, we're going to be trying to find new resources internally for the next biennium. It is by no means, as I'm urging for this, focus solely on academic programs. It is everything that we're doing. And it, again, to echo Regent Barrett's comments, value, sure. Everything that we try to do and can do, we can articulate some message of value, but it's got to be relative value to the other things that we're doing. So please include those in our thoughts as well.
Regent Hamilton, one more question.
No, not a question, but maybe a statement of frustration. I think that the two campus presentations were excellent, but I guess I always thought we were going to approach this conversation from a system perspective. And I understand that the hard work has to come from the faculty and the campus up, but I think, I can't remember if it was Regent Buchanan or Regent Barrett said, we're leaving the resource out of the conversation. And I totally agree with you. We are leaving the resource out of the conversation. And the resource sat there at our morning session of, you know, we're going to probably have $32 million less than we had when we did our budget in November. And this somehow has to be tied to that, and that's what I'm not hearing today. And I'm hearing really good things from individual campuses about how they're reviewing and what their process will be. But I'm not hearing anything from either the affiliated campuses of MSU or the affiliated campuses of UM, and we have to hear that before we can bring it all together as a system.
I agree. Other comments or? Okay, Deputy Commissioner Moore. Well, this is obviously will be a continuing conversation. It's certainly tomorrow morning. Are you going to review the level 1 memorandum or just sort of?
Actually, people can just look at the level 1 memorandum. It was very short, and I just want to call out a thank you to the campuses who now are regularly reporting what they're doing with their certificates, and I just appreciate that transparency. So thank you.
And then the next item are the level 2 items, which are again here for our information now, but following our typical policy, then they'll come before us for a vote in May with a couple phone calls in between to discuss the efficacy of them. But this would be a good time if you see anything that you want to bring a question about, start the discussion now so that the campuses have fair time. Regent Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything in particular on this list, but I have a process question, I guess, maybe for Deputy Commissioner Moore. We have a relatively short period of time when these submission items are posted on our Regents agenda to review them at the same time as we're considering, for instance, for this meeting, the level 2 items that were on action, basically, or consent at this meeting. And I'm just wondering if I'm the only one out here going, I don't know when is the appropriate time to contact who with any questions or concerns I might have about a specific program proposal.
Thank you, Regent Hamilton, Chairman Barrett. The process, I think, does allow you to ask at any time that you would like once it's been posted. We ask for the level 2 items to come in. I look through them. I make some individual calls myself sometimes to say, this one doesn't look like it's ready. You know, wait a minute, can you pull this, or can you work with somebody else? So I'll do some of that kind of screening to start with in a collegial way with campuses. We put the memo together, put it back out within a week. Summer and I work together on that. We post it for our academic officers. The academic officers actually don't have a very long turnaround time, and so this is a lot of what you were mentioning earlier today about we actually expect the academic officers to be talking to one another before those things are submitted, because otherwise they would not have as much time as they might need. We then have a phone call conference with the academic officers for any concerns intercampus to be discussed. And again, for the viewpoint of, you know, is this going to fly with what you've heard from the committee or from the Board of Regents in general. Following that, we go to the meeting with you in terms of discussion of the ones that are up for action as a way to try to get a lot of the information gathered and ready for any discussion that we want to have at this, and to decide which ones are sort of slam dunk. There's plenty of information, there's no angst, those are consent agenda items, and which ones really should have the kind of rich discussion like we had earlier today. I think it's important from a process point of view to remember what the committee chairs do so well is to always ask if anybody wants to pull anything off of consent agenda. And I think the other thing that is a beauty of our system and our transparency in the Office of the Commissioner is that we invite public comment on anything, on the agenda and off the agenda. And so even if we've had consent agenda items, if people have a need to comment on something, they can still do that. I think in terms of the timing, I'm kind of feeling like the December, January, February thing just gets crunched, no matter how hard we try. And I was only semi in jest when I said that it was, I frustrating that February only had 28 days, because it did seem like, especially in legislative years, we don't have as much time as we wish we would have. And so, you know, one of the things that committee could consider is take a look at the timeline which Summer has just put up, and see, you know, think if it is too tight, what might we do to change some of that. So I'll take that into consideration. I will, by my announcement now, ask my chief academic officers to take that into consideration, and if there are ways to improve it, we'll see if we can do it.
Sort of a side note comment. Can I do that?
This is a side note comment.
This is a side note, but the conversation, Commissioner Stearns and I visited last week some about the consent agenda and the action item agendas, and it's going to be her recommendation that we move the consent agenda on all of our items, on all of our agendas before the action items. So we'll vote on the consent, and if for some reason somebody wants to pull one of those off, then it'll automatically drop to the action. And I think it'll leave it in a lot more comfortable place, because now we have the action agenda, and then we get to consent, and if you want to pull it off, nobody really knows what to do with it from there. So if that, everybody, board members think that's a good plan, that may help answer some of those things, and it'll give us a format to move it to the action item agenda.
Great idea, as usual. Any more comment on the level 2 submission items that we'll be looking at in May? Okay, at this time, then, we're going to, each of the, well, not each, the campuses listed there are going to discuss honorary doctorates they may be awarding. President Cruzado has advised me she's going to defer her discussion of this until May, but then I guess that leaves us with MSU Northern and then Montana Tech. Chancellor Trokey.
Pass. If I may comment as well, Mr. Chairman.
Is this a pass-fail thing?
Yeah. Tech is, MSU Northern is still working on its press release and working with the recipient. And so on our next conference call, prior to commencement, we can get that approved and make sure we don't rush a press release. And let's see, I think that's, you just said was the same with MSU Bozeman?
No, MSU Bozeman passed until May.
Right, so it's
Chancellor Gilmore.
Montana Tech.
And we know you're not taking a pass.
I've never worked on a pass-fail system. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thomas Dyke was nominated by our campus. We are very excited that he would be awarded an honorary doctoral of science degree. He has been a strong contributor in all ways to our campus, serving the foundation, serving the campus in every way. He's been an extraordinarily successful businessman, having served businesses through the level of vice president and then starting his own businesses, large businesses in the petroleum field, which he has sold, started new businesses, and sold. Very, very successful individual.
Thank you. Any comment? No, we would vote on this when? Do we? This is under information. Yeah, it should have been an action item, which we will, since we're in committee, we'll look at it tomorrow. We will act on it. And thank you, Chancellor Gilmore. That concludes our agenda. Is there any public comment on any items not on the academic and student affairs agenda? Okay. Seeing no volunteers. There's always one.
There's always one. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Stearns. My name is Grant Mittman, and I'm a biology professor at Montana Tech, which is my real fun job. I've been attending Board of Regents meetings actually for 8 of my 16 years, and this is the first time I've addressed the board. Today...
We must have really made you mad.
I'm generally quiet, although people on my campus wouldn't agree with that. My reason here today is I am the Montana Tech Faculty Association president and the co-chair of the Coalition of Union Faculty. And Doug Coffin, who's not present today, asked me if I would present some information to the board. And hopefully Neil can help me out here. But we want to thank you for your support of higher education. And it's really nice. It's almost like a love fest that we're all on the same page. And that's really wonderful. But I do want to, and I have a handout, and the author of this is Doug Coffin from UFA, University of Montana, and our chair of Coalition of Union Faculty. And I just want to point out a few things and make it a matter of public record that the faculty are very concerned with what's been going on in the legislature and the support of higher education. We worry that with a 15% tuition hike, we'll lose our very good students. We're also concerned about losing our very good faculty. I'm approached by faculty that have just been hired asking me, is there a future for them in Montana? They go, will I ever be able to afford to retire with TIAA-CREF? Am I going to get pay raises? This is a year when we're told by our governor there's money available, yet look what's happening. We're worried. But mostly we are concerned with the quality of education for the state of Montana. And the last page of our handout, I think this straight A's really says it all. Academics, quality instruction, access to all qualified students, achievement, advocacy, affordability, and accountability. And we just want to know that we are concerned and that we do appreciate all that the board has done and the commissioner and your support for us as well.
All right, thank you. You're free to speak. You don't have to wait another 8 years.
Thank you. I will take advantage of that and try not to be so shy. And do any members of the board or the commissioner have any questions? And we will see you tomorrow morning. I haven't been shy at the breakfast meeting, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, if not, Mr. Chairman, we will adjourn the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee and pass it back to you.
Thank you.
Ahead of time?
Ahead of time, duly noted. I think we will just go ahead and recess early. We were talking about maybe trying to do some of tomorrow's, but I think the best plan at this point is to break, and we'll tackle it again tomorrow. So at this point in time, we need to call for public comment. Is there any public comment on any items not on today's agenda? Any public comment? Dean Bingham, do you have a comment?
Not that's not on the agenda.
All right. You have instructions?
Yes. I want to make sure everybody has a map. We passed them out. If you did not copy that off of your email, to get to the airport campus, it does start at 5:30. I would suggest that you get there as soon as you can to make sure things in your area are ready to go and set up and prepared for the legislators, and that you have an idea of where you're at on that campus so that you can help direct a little bit for those questions you might have.
Okay. All right, then we will recess until tomorrow morning.